footballer Tyrone Mings has accused the Home Secretary of pretending to be disgusted by racist abuse online after she previously described the players taking the knee as gesture politics.
Well, Priti Patel tweeted that she supported the England team and that racism has no place in our country. In response, Ming said, "You don't get to stoke the fire at the beginning of the tournament by labelling our anti-racism message as gesture politics and then pretend to be disgusted when the very thing that we are campaigning against happens." Well, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Stephen Barclay, joins us now. Do you think this ongoing silence from Priti Patel in any meaningful statement should continue? Do you think it's about time she tried to put the record straight? Because clearly there's a big backlash going on out there.
Well, clamping down on the appalling abuse we've seen of our footballers is something that hopefully unites us all. It's something that should be rightly condemned. It's why the government is taking action through the Online Harms Bill. The Culture Secretary has been working closely with the FA and with senior black footballers in drawing up that legislation so we can take action.
Okay,
and of course, the platforms should be acting on it now. Okay. But if they fail to do so, then we will legislate and we will fine them for not doing so.
You said that anti-racism should unite us all. The Home Secretary said that the footballers taking the knee was simply gesture politics and refused to condemn those who booed while those footballers took the knee. Let's just have a listen to what she said.
I just don't support, people participating in, that type of gesture politics to a certain extent as well. It's all well to support a cause and, make your voices heard.
Do you think
to drive the right outcomes?
The England fans are right to boo?
Well, that's a choice for them, quite frankly.
Would you be booing if you're in the stands?
I've not gone to a football match to even sort of, contemplate that.
That was a couple of weeks ago. Do you think she's been overtaken by events?
Well, the Prime Minister was asked about this yesterday, and I think, as he said, it's important that however people want to make their views known in terms of protesting against racism, then we respect that, including if that is taking the knee.
But do you think the Home Secretary... No, sorry, please answer please answer the question. Do you think that the Home Secretary has been overtaken by events? Do you think she needs to consider her position? By that, I don't mean resign, but reissue a statement. Clara.
Well, the Prime Minister, I think, was clear yesterday that we should respect however people want to make their point. And the Home Secretary, of course, herself has been the victim of the most appalling online abuse. She herself has consistently campaigned against racism, and indeed, as Home Secretary, is taking action to tackle that. Is going after the extreme right-wing groups through her role as Home Secretary. So she herself has suffered online racism.
Has she been overtaken by events?
She has always campaigned against it. Yeah. And I think the point she was making was there are different ways of doing so. And as the Prime Minister said yesterday, we should respect people in doing that.
Has she been overtaken by events?
Well, I think the Prime Minister addressed this yesterday, and I think we should respect people taking the knee or making their point in different ways. But for the government, I think if the government wasn't taking action, then you'd be quick to say to me, well, why aren't we acting on the social media platforms? Why aren't we legislating to stop them hosting this sort of vile abuse online? And that is what we're doing. The Culture Secretary has been working with senior black footballers. We are bringing forward legislation to ensure that those social media platforms that host this horrible material are fined if they don't take action to tackle it. And we're legislating to ensure that happens. So the government is working with footballers, working to tackle this, and we will legislate to do so through the Online Harms Bill.
This isn't just criticism from your opponents. Baroness Varsi, who is a Tory peer, retweeted Priti Patel's tweet where Priti Patel said she was disgusted at the racism. And Baroness Varsi said, Priti, we as a government, as Conservatives, need to think about our role in feeding this culture in our country. If we whistle and the dog reacts, we can't be shocked if it barks and bites. It's time to stop the culture wars that are feeding division. Dog whistles win votes, but destroy nations. I mean, she's absolutely right, isn't she? And the government needs to have a look at itself.
Well, that's why we're legislating to tackle this. I think one of the great things about the Euros was how it brought...
Baroness Varsi is not talking about the responsibility of the government when it comes to social media companies, talking about the kind of messages you send out?
Well, that's it, and that's what the Prime Minister addressed yesterday, where the Prime Minister was asked about this at the press conference, Susanna, as you know, and was very clear about the importance of respect and respecting different people's positions, but ultimately tackling this scourge of racism. And that's what the government is working with black footballers to do. The social media platforms need to act to stop being enablers of this sort of racist abuse. And this is something that unites the country, wants to see action to tackle this. The Home Secretary herself has campaigned throughout her life to tackle racism. She herself has been the victim of the most appalling online racist abuse.
You've said that, and we know that.
That unites us.
Yes, you've said. Sorry, but you are repeating. I'm sorry, sir, but you are repeating a point, and we accept that. We know that she's been abused racially. That's on the record. Can we just move from the social media platforms issue to the individuals who actually posted these disgusting messages? We don't know how many, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. Hopefully, we'll find out. There is a growing clamour in this country. It's represented in the media and in phone-in radio programmes that the people want to see those who sent those messages prosecuted, and many of them think they should go to jail. Are you working with the Metropolitan Police to make sure that they really do chase down the individuals who sent these messages?
Yes, we are. And where the law has been broken, then it's important that the action is taken. The CPS will look at the evidence that is presented by the police, and the police are looking at that in order gathering that information. But we also need more action from the social media platforms themselves, and that is why we're taking the action we are. But I think one of the defining features of the Euros was how it brought the country together, how the England football team represented the very best of our country. I think so many of us have been shocked by the abuse that a number of the footballers have suffered. And I think this is something that unites us, that we should come together to condemn, to work to stamp out, to ensure that the platforms that enable this are not continuing to do so. And as you say, where people have acted illegally, then the full force of the law should be felt. And we're working on that.
Stephen Buckley, when does the online harms bill come into effect?
That will come into effect next year.
Next
and
year?
We're working...
Next year? I mean, this is what... this abuse is happening today. This abuse is happening online right now. How is it taking so long for the government, with all the strength and power that you have, to not be able to instruct the social media companies to be taking this stuff down immediately, adjusting their algorithms, forcing people's anonymous accounts to close down? Why are we waiting until next year?
Well, that's for the passage of the legislation, and the way Parliament works, Susanna, passage of legislation and then getting royal assent does take time, because when you pass legislation, there's various aspects that need to be considered. That needs to be debated by members of Parliament.
Online abuse didn't start today, though, did it?
The point you're making is with respect, a slightly different one, which is the government taking action in parallel with the social media companies to look at things, as you say, like the algorithms? Is it, as Richard said, working with the police to ensure that they have the resources to go after those where offences have taken place and ensure that evidence is gathered, that is presented to the CPS? Absolutely. So we are doing those things. What I was referring to was, in parallel, we are looking to legislate through the Online Harms Bill so that financial penalties can be imposed on those companies if they fail to act. But we are, in parallel to that, working with them to look at those algorithms, to put pressure on them, to work with the footballers that have been most affected by this abuse, because this is something that we all want to see stopped. It is something that unites us. I think all of your viewers have been shocked by the abuse that we've seen, and it's something that brings us together. We want to see it brought to an end, and that's what we're working on.
We do obviously take a point about due parliamentary process, frustrating as that may be. I just wonder if you could be using the fact that this bill, in the end, will hopefully make it onto the statute books at some point next year, right now, as leverage with the companies, that you could actually be saying to them, you think this is tough, it could be a lot tougher. Start making the changes ahead of the legislation, because the problem is, as Susanna just said to you, is here and now. So start making the changes now ahead of legislation.
100%, Richard, and that's exactly what we're doing. So to be clear, that's why I said it's in parallel. So we are legislating. There is a parliamentary scrutiny process around that, as you rightly accept. But in parallel, because that sword of Damocles is there that will have punitive financial penalties for the firms if they don't act. That is exactly, as you say, why we're working with those companies now to put pressure on. It's why we're working with the football authorities as well, with footballers. The Culture Secretary has met senior black footballers to discuss this, to discuss the action that has been taken. And Oliver Dowden, as the Culture Minister, is working on this now to ensure action is taken now in parallel to the legislation we're bringing forward.
Just before we let you go, the SAGE committee says there could be 1,000 hospital admissions every day in the wake of lifting of all the restrictions. Are you going to reconsider lifting, for instance, the rule on mask wearing indoors?
Well, the 4 tests, Susanna, have been met, so that's why the legal restrictions are being lifted. But you're right, we still need to be cautious. We need to learn to live with the virus. And there will be circumstances, as the guidance makes clear, where we will recommend to people that they should continue to wear a mask. For example, if they're in a very busy place, if there were people they don't normally mix with, perhaps on a commuter train that's particularly crowded, for example. But at the same time, the guidance allows, rather than it being the law, that discretion so that if you're on a train at a time which is off-peak and there's very few other people, then it shouldn't be a requirement that you wear a mask.
And do you reserve the right to reintroduce those legal restrictions in the autumn? I mean, very noticeably, we're no longer hearing that these are irreversible.
Well, the key reason why the legal restrictions were able to lift is because of the deployment of the vaccine and the extra 4-week delay before moving to step 4 and lifting those legal restrictions enabled us to deliver an extra 7 million vaccines. So that does create that wall that enables us to meet the 4 tests that we set out. And of course, the legal restrictions themselves is a very draconian step. Often people were concerned about using the law in terms of that impact on their personal freedoms.
You might take again in the autumn if the hospitalisations get out of control.
Well, throughout, the Prime Minister has shown that we will follow the science and we'll consider the evidence. But the key difference now is that with the vaccines, we have that vaccine wall. But at the same time, we've got to learn to live with the virus. And therefore, the guidance will make clear there will be certain circumstances where it is appropriate to continue to wear a face mask. But there's no perfect time to lift these restrictions. As the Chief Medical Officer set out, doing so now with the summer weather, with the school holidays, with the extra vaccines that 4-week delay has enabled, means that now is the best time to do this, but there's no perfect time.
All right, Mr. Barclay, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.